The People Playbook is for professional business owners and leaders who understand business rises and falls on people. You will hear practical, real-world conversations on clear leadership, smart hiring, and building strong teams. All formulas for retention. Get ready to hear your professional peers and industry experts as they discuss lessons learned and best practices. Get that journal out. You'll be taking lots of notes.
Welcome to the People Playbook with Coach Cora, here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, where real people tackle real workplace challenges and we leave you with solutions for the real world. In the last few episodes, we have been focusing on retention. We spoke with Gina at Bamboo HR about user experience and having our new employees have a positive onboarding. We've talked with Wendy Lord at Toastmasters about the importance of communication and how feedback contributes to people's ability to be successful. We also spoke with Jen Miller at Leading Edge about the importance of building the skills and competencies that are consistent. Well, today we will launch a short series on hiring because it is such an important part of retention and because the current labor market is challenging. I continue to hear from so many leaders and business owners that the employee attrition alone is creating instability in their business. Low retention impacts service, quality, production, and certainly profits. So let's talk about it. Now, I'm a fundamentalist, and when challenges arise, I go back to basics. And when I go back to basics, I look at the purpose. And that means that I want to look at what do I do before I do what I'm about to do. Therefore, before the worker comes the work. There are 4 big steps businesses can take way before they put out that job position, the candidate interviewing, before we start searching for candidates. Let's create some clarity. First of all, let's align the work with your strategy. What is the purpose? Let's gain agreement from all stakeholders. What work needs to be done? And let's gain agreement on what the key knowledge, skills, and abilities are that will be needed to perform the work and at what level. What that will do is help us determine who we need. And finally, we will then create the success factors. What do people need to be or have to be successful in this role? So first of all, let's start with that first step, alignment, the purpose of the work. So we want to really identify before we get into designing the workflow or creating the job description, we want to make sure that we have put a clear reason for that box, that position to be on our org chart. When we look at our strategy and our structure, what is it that that particular role will do to accomplish that? Where are we missing? What is not being done? What is behind? Or what new thing do we need to pursue to continue to drive our strategy? When we have that clarity of the purpose, that defines everything else. And this is what I mean when I refer to the talent strategy. The talent strategy that drives the business strategy. There's a lot of research out there about companies that get this right. There's one particular company out there, they're a rental car agency, and their purpose was, we don't want that person out there that's the go-getter that's always going to want to be the best of the best of the best. We want that person that's going to come in, want to stay in that job, and just loves helping other people and being a part of the team. Because for us, our strategy is so reliant on people staying, not on high performers. It's not rocket science we're doing. We want the people that want to come in, do a great job, be happy, and go home to their families. That strategy for them has worked so well. And so right up front, they say, what do we want from these roles. We want them to stay, and we want them to care, and we want them to connect with each other so that they will deliver the best in customer service. That's our winning strategy. That's a great example. So moving on to step number 2, if we really are at that place where we have absolute clarity of what the purpose of the role is, now we have to make sure that we all agree on how we define that. If one person believes that a coordinator does this, but the other person expects the coordinator to do something very different, then we don't have agreement. And that person will come in and be misdirected and misguided. So, for example, if we were to hire a role as a receptionist, if the work is to receive people and be the face of the company, then that's a very important part of the work. I'm very welcoming. I'm very warm. I'm enthusiastic. I'm great at taking care of people. I am a wonderful host is different from, I want you to answer calls and do these other minor tasks. And I want you to do some other tasks for us when there's nobody in the reception area. And I want you. That's a very different function for that role. So when I say I'm going to hire somebody as a receptionist, if the person does the hiring is hiring somebody to be the face of the company, that director of first impressions, if you will, and that's their expectation, and they want them to set them up to be able to do that. And then the other stakeholders have all other kinds of ideas. You can imagine what that looks like when that person shows up. People are asking them to do things they didn't know they were going to do, and we didn't select the right person, and that person gets frustrated. So let's move then into the step 3. But before we do, I do want to remind everybody, if you go to CoachCora.com and click on the podcast tab, there's an opportunity to fill questions. And here at 9:30 a.m. The Answer on the People's Playbook, we love questions. And Wendy has indicated to me that there is a question in regards to this topic. Wendy, what is the question that we have?
You're talking about hiring. I have great people where I want to use their talents and develop them. Why would I not start from the skills of the people that I already have rather than thinking about the work first?
Isn't that a great question, Wendy? Mm-hmm. Do you love that one?
I do.
Me too. I love it. And we see this so much in companies. I need this work over here done, and I have this person, and I think they could do it. So I'll just have them do it. Or this person is really struggling in that role, so how about I just put them over in this role? And what happens, that's the business building around people. I'm going to build my business around people. When we bring people into our business, a lot of leaders end up really connecting and liking and wanting the people that they're working with to stay with them. And if they're not able to perform that job over there, we'll just put them over there in another position. And it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? The counterintuitive part of that is we're asking people to do something that, first of all, we haven't even been clear. All we know is we need that done, so can you go do it instead of doing this? And Wendy, most people say, oh, okay. And I have had so many coaching clients that have come to me and said, my company hired me into a role, and it turns out I wasn't very successful in that role. So they asked me to work in another role, which I did. And then they did some restructuring, so they asked me to move into another role. And I feel confused because I don't understand why I'm so unfulfilled and angry. I mean, they kept me. I should feel valued for that. And I'm trying to be loyal, except that I'm miserable. So when we think about truly valuing the people that we bring into our organization, it's less about just keeping them and finding something for them. It's far more about being absolutely clear on what the purpose is and how the individuals within our organization serve that purpose. People find energy and self-motivation from connecting to a purpose. They get frustrated when they're just trying to navigate a myriad of tasks and outcomes. And that's why we would say, instead of just putting people, they're good people. I can be a tremendous person, and I would consider myself, and I know Wendy does consider herself too, a high performer. I strive to be successful. I want to be super good. I want to know what my goals are, and I want to attain them. I'm a high performer. I have also found myself in positions where I failed and I was miserable. And I would go so far, it's true, people might have even looked at me as a problem child. Like, what are we going to do with her? But I wasn't in a position. Somebody put me in a position one time as an accounts payable clerk. I'm the worst person you would ever put in an accounts payable position. And there I was. And when they moved me over to account management, it was a night and day picture. I was such a different employee. And so I'm not suggesting that you don't utilize your best people. I am suggesting, to answer the question, that you do it with intention and with analysis. Does this person have what they need to be successful in that role? And is that role, are they what the role needs? Sometimes caring about people means putting them somewhere else in a different company so they can be successful. This is 9:30 a.m. The Answer, and you're listening to the People Playbook with Coach Cora, and we will take a short break to hear from our sponsor. Today's episode of the People Playbook with Coach Cora is brought to you by TLC Total Lawn Care. You know that first impressions matter, and at TLC Total Lawn Care, their mission is simple: protecting their customers' image. For over 25 years, local and family-owned TLC Total Lawn Care has served Central and South Texas commercial and residential clients with trusted, complete landscape contracting and irrigation services delivered by their team of skilled, licensed professionals you can trust to consistently enhance the curb appeal of your property. TLC Total Lawn Care's foundational values of trust, development, and integrity have contributed to their expert ability to provide unified management across your portfolio. They have simplified the logistics to enhance consistent quality. So clean up your image. Call TLC Total Lawn Care today at 1-800-796-8087 or visit their website at tlclawncare.com. Welcome back. This is Cora, the People's Playbook, and we are on 9:30 a.m. The Answer, talking about the fundamentals of hiring and making sure that we are doing what we need to do before we do what we do. What is the purpose and what agreement do we have moving forward? So let's dig into some more stuff. Let's really get into step 3. Step 3 is about, before I think about who I want to hire, I need to know what they need to be able to do. What knowledge will they bring? What skills will they bring? And what abilities will they bring? Until I define those, interviewing is next to impossible. How do I select a candidate if I don't have clear guidelines of what they need? And how do I select among many? And here's where it gets super interesting. There are still, and there was research done by a company called Predictive Index, and I'm just going to throw out the number. I don't remember what the exact one was, but it was well over 80%. Well over 80% of leaders are still hiring based on gut instinct. And that's so problematic. And that's why this is such a big part. Don't even start interviewing yet until you are very, very clear. If this is a job we need, then what knowledge, skills, or ability would somebody need to be able to conduct this job? And there's different levels. And knowledge, skills, and ability is when we really get into the ability to evaluate our talent strategy. I want to use an example of a company I was working with recently. One of their barriers, their bottlenecks, if you will, was their teams were out utilizing the equipment and the tools needed to deliver their service. And these tools and equipment kept breaking down. And up until that point, they had just asked the people out in the field, hey, if your machine breaks, fix it. Make sure you're taking care of it, oil it, do whatever it is. They had a series, make sure you do this, that, and that. So it was unmonitored, left to the front line, take care of your equipment. And unsurprisingly, they knew it was problematic. It just became more problematic. Equipment's always breaking. Equipment was always failing. Equipment was always out. And it really started to drag on their production as this problem began to escalate. We don't have the equipment. We're having to shift equipment around from this site to that site to that site. It really was problematic. So to their credit, they said, do we need to add a role on the org chart to increase and improve workflow? Yes, we need to add somebody, and the purpose of that would be to manage the equipment so that the crews can work effectively and always have the equipment they need so they can do the work we're asking. Made sense. And then the next step was, do we all agree that this person won't be out in the field when we need somebody? We're going to dedicate. And that was a tough conversation. Everybody had to commit. It wasn't just an extra worker that we could drag out in the field. Because why we got real clear there is the temptation was to say, hey, Cora knows how to work on equipment and hers is always running. Let's bring her in from the field and she can work on it. Won't that be great? And when we really dug in, we knew what was going to happen. Cora would be busy working on equipment and then somebody didn't show up, and guess where she was? So now we're adding this position, we're adding the cost, and we're not getting the return. So we have to all agree, what will this person do? Now, if the agreement was we can have a flexi, we don't have enough work for a full-time person to work on machines. So half-time that person will be at certain jobs, and half-time if that's what we're all going to agree on. But we can't agree it's a full-time position, and then everybody else has expectations of how they'll utilize that person. So we had that agreement. So we went through those first two steps, and then we get to knowledge, skills, and ability, and we really dug in and said, if the purpose is to keep the equipment maintained and have an equipment plan, when do I need to take things out? When do they need to be replaced? When are we maintaining them? As we're growing, do we have the equipment we need? Do we have replacement equipment for those crucial positions or pieces of equipment? Is that somebody that just knows how to maintain equipment? Or is that a higher level of knowledge? So when we really started analyzing what skill do they need? Well, they need to know how to manage equipment and equipment as it relates to workflow and workflow as it relates to productivity. And so when we started listing all those knowledge, skills, and ability, as you can imagine, it said, the response was, we'll never be able to afford that person. That person is way more expensive. And I promise you, the opposite has also happened. Hey, we want this top-level person. Let's spend a lot of money and bring this person in. And when we start identifying the skills, well, that's not really that expensive of a person. Maybe we should bring somebody in. That's the important part. We have to agree on what level does this person need to be at. We don't wait for the people to come in and interview and then make that decision. Well, I like that person because they have more experience. We have to know. We have to go look for that. And here's the other thing when we really get good at identifying knowledge, skills, and ability. Now I can decide, am I going to buy, build, or lease the talent? In this situation, because of the level of skill they needed and knowledge and know-how, what they determined was it would be much easier to outsource it to a professional firm that said, we know how to manage equipment and update it, and we have backup. You don't have to buy it. And we have. And really the solution came for them to outsource it. And that's the beauty of going back to fundamentals and really asking you the questions. It assists you in making better decisions. And let's roll right into that fourth step, which is create success factors. What skills will they need and who will they be? One of the great examples I have of that is I spent a lot of time working in long-term care, and I still do. And one of the most interesting roles and hiring practices that I have observed is most long-term care facilities have what is called a director of maintenance. And it's that person's job to make sure that facility is safe. Does it meet all regulations? Is it meet code? Do they have a plan? Do they have a backup plan to the plan? And are they proactively making sure that that building in every way, shape, or form is safe for the vulnerable population that lives within it? It's an important role. And so if we were to look at what the characteristics would be, we would want somebody who's a stickler for the rules, who really believes in standards, who is very planful, and defends their plan. Instead, what is so interesting, because part of maintenance is responding to the needs of the staff and the residents, most facilities end up hiring, this might come as a surprise to everybody, but they hire that person that is friendly, responsive, willing, and doesn't challenge them. And that's the importance, because what happens in a facility that hires a director of maintenance that is easy to get along with, is not a challenger, is conflict adverse, and loves to please others, is you end up with a building that's not safe. If you hire somebody who is challenging, difficult, can quote every rule book in the world, you have a safe building. And that's where leaders have to really grow. Hiring the person not that you liked, not that you connected with, not that appeared and showed up the best. Because I'll tell you, some of the people for some of these roles, the best person might not interview very well. And there's going to be people that show up for interviews you don't like. That's not the point. Get away from the gut and instinct hiring and use the data and use purpose and use real criteria for the work that's going to be done so that that person can be successful, and so can your company. So those are your 4 steps. I hope everybody found that helpful. And as the talent pool shrinks, the intuitive response is to expand the net, cast a wider net, bring them all in. What is counterintuitive as a solution is to be more clear, more specific, and more targeted at what you're needing, because you can't afford to lose people. So taking the time, being very specific with who you're hiring and bringing in and setting them up for success is your best first step before you ever begin the hiring process. We can't afford misaligned talent. Next week, we are going to be treated with a business owner who's going to come in from the trenches and talk to us about her hiring woes and her challenges around keeping people because her business is so reliant on it. And we love to bring in our professionals. We also love to bring in those just out in the trenches doing it right now. You'll be delighted to hear from her. And after we hear from her, our next week will be Lauren with Deacon Recruiting, wonderful recruiting firm, who's going to talk about what it means to go find the right candidate for a business and what she needs from them. They know where all the candidates are, believe me, and they know who's looking way better than anybody else. But they have to know what you need and they have to know what you want. And she'll talk a little bit how to do that. And then from there, we'll roll into the final of this series of hiring with Amy Leslie, and she is with Perspective Consulting, and she's going to talk to us about how to use the data to compare candidates and to help us make better decisions in our hiring. Well, this is Coach Cora. This is the People Playbook here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. And as a reminder, your business rises and falls on your people. And if you have a question, go to CoachCora.com, click on the podcast tab, and drop down to the form and submit your question and hear it on the air.
Thank you for listening to the People Playbook. For more information, Coach Cora can be found on LinkedIn and at CoachCora.com. Let's meet here next Saturday, 2 p.m. on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.